Hello, everybody. Welcome. Coach Trisha from Be Here Now. I just wanted to give you a training today on the representational system preferences that we've been talking to. So if you're working with me, we've done this test together, okay? And now you have some tools to now go use. But what I want to cover is really, why are we doing this? How are you going to implement this type of knowing now that you know what you know about yourself and about potentially other people? Why are we doing this? Why does this actually apply to getting different results? So there's a couple of things I want to review first, because I can't actually go into the training and explore more the kinesthetic, the visual, the verbal, all those different pieces. I can't go into that part quite yet without you understanding one specific concept. And so first I want to dive into that, and that's this. In NLP, we talk about a specific pillar, which is that the most flexible part within a system will have the most influence on that system. So in other words, the most flexible person within a group will be the most influential in that group. So the goal of NLP is to increase the variety of ways in which we can respond to a situation. So I'm giving you tools and tips and tricks and different things to think about, new perceptions of communication, new areas to grab and go try in the workplace or at home or wherever you decide to use them. And when we grow our internal and external behavioral flexibility, like our ability to look at things and not be so attached to them, but just be open to the process actually working, right? When we change the internal flexibility, the behavioral flexibility within ourselves, we increase our chances of choosing successful responses, right? We increase the chances of something actually working. So the more times that you trial and error some of this communication work that we're doing in these sessions, or the more that you change some of the environment tips that I give you today, where you're like, oh yeah, I could change that. Oh, I could put in music there. Oh, I could do this. The more that you implement and the faster, the more opportunities are going to come about, and the greater the results and the responses you're going to get from other people are going to come. Now, they're not all going to be the responses that you want. So the behavioral flexibility starts within you to be able to say, okay, hey, that didn't work. I'm not going to get angry about it. I'm just going to shift to a different direction and try this next time. Try this next time until I get closer and closer and I start to see a change in a response that feels better for me and feels better for the other person. Because this is not manipulation, right? This is persuasion. If you are in a persuasive leadership role, you need to be able to persuade people to think a certain way, behave a certain way, do a certain thing. And so your ability to be behaviorally flexible internally is what's going to increase your chances of choosing successful responses and getting successful responses from other people. Now, flexibility here means a large variety of points of view, behaviors, attitudes, ideas, ways of speaking, tonalities, strategies to choose from. So we're going through a lot of these, and we will continue to go through in each session different things that you can try until you get a better result. So we are able to cultivate our flexibility when we are open to many things and to different kinds of people, while also exercising self-reflexivity. Self-reflexivity is a cool word, right? When we are the most influential, we can deliver the greatest impact in a team or an organization, not only through our arsenal of successful responses, but also because we can move and inspire people to action, right? As a leader, you need to be able to move and inspire people to action, and the right action, aligned to client success, patient success, customer success, whatever you have here. So flexibility then will help us instigate changes and transformations towards our desired results, so each party and the world are better as a whole. So we're doing this because it's better for the world. We're not doing it because it's better for us and it's easier for us and it's more exciting for us and we feel better with us and we get more done here on our end. No, it's what's best for the overall grand scheme of things and what's better for the world ultimately, right? What's better for this person that I'm trying to change their behavior, right? If you want a culture of people to change, you have to go individually and get them to behave in a certain way in order to create the culture that you want, right? And so you're doing that as we go, and you're helping people shift and grow, and you're helping people shift in their careers and grow and step into a new version of themselves so that they can also go on to do bigger and brighter things. So there's a lot going on here. It's not just when the bad stuff's going on. It's, are you inspiring people to rise up, right? So there's things going on here within your behavioral flexibility and your self-reflexivity, which is your ability to look inward and say, what worked, what didn't work? Did I get attached to that? Did I get too frustrated? Did my tonality go up because unconsciously I just got really pissed in the moment? Like, you got to be able to go inward and find those things, right? If something does not work, do something different. So our ability to choose from different behavioral options defines our success. So making use of the different options we would have, right, requires a conscious, proactive choice for change, which might not always be easy, right? This is especially true if we've already invested much time and effort on the first option we chose, right, and had to work from scratch once again on an alternative path. Like, nevertheless, our ability to change directions or switch or pivot strategies when we get stuck on something or on someone doing a certain thing, it will always work to our benefit in the end if we are more flexible in how we present and deliver communication. So allowing others' responses to dictate our state, that's you losing yourself, your own will, right? If you're allowing other people to dictate your state, you are not in control of your state. And so I'm trying to get you to be more in control of your state, which then opens up other options and other behaviors that you can now use to everyone's advantage, right? So we can't just be throwing our hands up in the air in a tantrum because whatever I'm doing is not working. Well, whatever you're doing is not working because you're trying the same thing over and over and expecting a different result, but you're not getting a different result. That's frustration. But that frustration is coming up because that's not your highest self. There are other ways around that. And so I'm bringing some things to the table that are going to help you do that, right? We want healthy control. Right? You're giving up your free will to another person. If everything else on the exterior needs to change for you to feel good inside, that's not how it works, right? You in control. What do you need to do to change to reflect the change that you want to see in other people? I know it's a hard pill to swallow sometimes, but we really got to look in the mirror. Are the people that I'm not getting along with at work, or that I'm not getting along with my boss here, is it because I actually see myself reflected in them? I was also once there. I also have felt that same way at times, just like me, right? So pay attention to the things that fire you up, that trigger you, because those are signs of learning. There's such an immense amount of wisdom and knowledge in those triggers. It's coming up to teach you something in the moment. So pay attention to the moments, because this is a moment-to-moment practice, and I will continue to say it over and over and over. It is not going to happen overnight. The more iterations you do, the more moments you are intentional about the things from session 1, intentionality. It's like the more intentional you are moment to moment throughout the day as you transition into the car, into work, into a meeting, into a conversation, into an interaction, back home, at dinner, putting your kids to bed, like all those things, the greater the freedom you have internally, right? When you set the intention and you go in with the end in mind, it makes a huge difference. Now, granted, I will say that there are times where the last straw has been thrown and you don't realize until then that the relationship needs to be cut. I am never going to tell you to cut a relationship. That is up to you. You have to use your intuition and the discernment process to be able to do that if that's the case. But what we're after here, that's not normally the case. Normally, we don't need to cut relationships. We just haven't been behaviorally flexible enough to influence the situation in the way we want it to go. So yes, I have cases where a client decides to fire the individual or give them a PIP. And that's a part of this too. But usually the scenario or the relationship you'd like to enhance has so much opportunity to grow. You just haven't tried it in a way that's effective yet. And now you have all the tools to try to make it effective, and try until you start to see, like I said, it nudging in the direction that you truly want. It takes discipline because it's not going to happen overnight, right? But I promise you, if you use the tools we discuss, you start to implement little scripts here and there, you start to come up with a better intention. You start to prep differently. You know the outcome that you want to have in mind. You know how you want that person to feel in that interaction. It will change the game when you start to implement the things that we talk about in session. So representational system preferences is just one of these many tools. So I'm going to discuss that today. You'll get different results by understanding your own representational system, which is basically how you learn, right? It'll open up your mind and others to new opportunities, new energies, new conversations, etc. Right? So now whether you want to generate more influence as a human toward your team or your organization, whether you want your team culture to shift into being higher performing, or you simply want better relationships with someone, better relationship with somebody that you work with all the time, that you can't stand working with right now, but are committed to addressing, it's going to require you to step into that relationship differently, right? It'll feel vulnerable. It might feel sticky at times. That's okay. Let it be. This is you utilizing your courage muscle, right? We have to actually use the courage muscle to build it, stepping outside of what is normal. And it's not necessarily like, yes, it's outside of comfort level, stepping outside of the comfort zone into the discomfort zone, if that's what you want to label it. I say you're just stepping into something different, because is it really uncomfortable? Or is it just uncomfortable because you're labeling it as such? Ultimately, it's just different than what's normal. And so the body goes through this process where it's like, it feels uncomfortable. It feels a little bit like sticky, but it's just because you're so used to doing it one way that your body's now going, your nervous system is going outside of another way and is doing it differently. So you feel it, but let's not label it. This is growth. This is the growth process. It's actually a beautiful thing. It's transformation, ultimately. So I hope that makes sense. This is us, and this is me behind the scenes helping your nervous system, because everything is related to unconscious patterns and conscious patterns. You have a nervous system response to all of it, whether it's a limiting emotion, it's a limiting whatever, or it's something that creates peace, joy, love, freedom, optimism, acceptance, a higher level state. And so I know on the background that if I can get you into a state of being that's higher, that's more accepting, that's even to a place of neutrality, it opens up more options for you. But if we allow ourselves to sit and sulk and go in that downward spiral of negative emotion into frustration or doubt or guilt or shame or any of it, then you are allowing yourself to stay there. And the goal is to get you that duration to shorten and shorten and shorten. For you to be in frustration, instead of 2 days of frustration, you're in a state of frustration for only about 2 hours, 2 minutes. And then your energy shifts because you're in control. Because what the energy that you are in, you will also attract. So pay very, very close attention to that. If you're in a mood, guess what you're going to attract? Because you're going to see other things and other people that are also in that mood. You're in a specific state. It's just like the Toyota effect. You go to buy a red Toyota truck, all of a sudden that's all you see on the highways. They've always been there, but now you're focused on it. And so that's what you see. So it's the same thing with emotion. If you're getting frustrated because you're not getting a certain outcome with a certain person, pay attention to the energy you're projecting into that interaction. Show up for the relationship that you want, not the one that you're in, regardless of how they show up. And I know that that's tough sometimes because you've not done that before. I give you so much credit for being in this room because I know that you're high performing. This is your next level. It's being so in control and open to the journey of it, detached from that, boundaried in the fact that their emotion is not yours, that energetically you can step in how you want to without someone else's energy affecting you. That's healthy control. And that's what we're working on here. So now moving into the actual training around this. This is the specific, the details, the minutia of the training that I want you to be able to see both big picture and also in it. So especially for you, because I want you to walk away today feeling like you can really understand how you understand better, and really be able to ask for what you need in order to understand things quicker, right? To pick up on things quicker, or to see things clearer, or to get a better taste in your mouth, or to, right? And language is so powerful, right? You use specific language. I need to get a better grip on that. That's typically a kinesthetic thing. I need to get a grip on. That's a movement, that's a feeling state. And people typically will speak in the form that they're receiving information. Isn't that funny? And granted, like we did the test, many of you are kind of across the board. Some people go in, they're kind of an even percentage across the kinesthetic, auditory, digital, auditory, and visual representation systems. A lot of times that happens. But most of the time there's one or two that really stand out. And then there's a couple of the other ones that kind of funnel in. This isn't to get a complete and perfect depiction of who you are and what's going on in every situation, right? Let's get away from that. This is to give you a good overall self-reflective time in order to just get curious about yourself and learn things about yourself that you didn't realize before, so that you can start to use some of these natural ways of doing things, natural ways of receiving information or asking for information. Now you're doing it intentionally and you're using it as a superpower, right? You're also using it as a means to connect and build rapport with your people, because people like to feel like you're interested in them. So when you go into you're implementing a new system at work, it's a new system, it's going across the whole thing, and you need people to be able to pick up on it quickly, to get it going and switch over quick, and you have a goal deadline to get it done by X date, that's on you to really figure out how best to implement this thing so that it covers all of those preferences. Kinesthetic, whether you have a visual video, whether you talk people through it, and you do that all simultaneously so that anybody coming into that training, they get what they need for them in some form. But a lot of times people are just offering the representational preference that they have themselves. So if they're kinesthetic, they're doing it kinesthetically, but a lot of people aren't picking up on that. So it'll make more sense once I go through these. So let's begin, shall we? So now for the training, kinesthetic, feelers and movers. Kinesthetic, you can look at as feelers and movers, people that need to move. You can see me, I'm moving my hands, I'm standing, I have a standing desk. I'm doing this on purpose because sitting down makes me crazy, right? So these learners, these types of learners, and I say learners, I'm going to use the word learners moving forward because it's a little bit better for you to interpret. You can also look at your kids as examples, how they learn. You can probably see a lot of that, especially at a young age. Usually one will really stand out at a young age. But kinesthetic learners tend to be people who are really active. They get up and do things. They play, they walk, they move around. Generally good at anything physical, maybe theatrical, or they love to dance, play sports, or those who like to tinker with things, right? They enjoy being in motion. So I'm extremely kinesthetic. Like I said, I have crystals and stones, and I don't have one with me right now, but when I go on my travels and I find crystals and stones and different things, I'm always finding a new one that I keep at home. I keep them in a little box to hold on to during my calls because it helps keep me focused to be in motion. And so for a lot of people, that would be really distracting. But now that you know what you know, you understand that that's actually keeping me focused. So you don't need to worry about it, right? Just let me do that. Same thing with when people are twirling in their chair or like clicking moving around their hands, moving around, doing something with their hands. Like anything involving movement is good for kinesthetic learners. So walking or standing meetings, they're not about sitting and listening to lecture, like not a lecture style thing, but walking and talking instead. Standing desk versus seated desk. Something to tactically touch during meetings to stay focused. Stress balls, stones, something to feel, right? Balance balls. There's specific foam rollers that you can put under your feet. There's mobility balls for under your feet during meetings to focus, right? Fidgeting with your feet or pen or swinging your chair is actually helping those people learn, like I said. However, others may be distracted by it. Yet if they knew that they might actually be understanding things better, wouldn't that make you more receptive to it, right? Instead of allowing it to distract you, you understand that that person actually needs that to focus. It changes the perspective. So shadowing others. A lot of kinesthetic learners love to shadow others because they get to, and for me, it's really about me with the mouse doing the thing, teaching me a new skill on the computer, but them talking to me because I'm also auditory, but they're walking me through it and I'm actually doing it with the mouse. I'm going through, I can remember stuff so much easier. My memory is quicker. It's able to pick up on things because I need to be moving to understand it. Does that make sense? I know you can't answer me right now, but so what else? Hold on a second. Let me make sure I'm covering all of this. We did a at a recent nursing conference, one of the speakers had everybody move to different sides of the room. That was a tactical and very strategic move on their part to get people to see things differently from a movement perspective. So all the kinesthetic learners were like, oh, this is awesome, right? They get it. They see that way more people are over here. They had to split up in terms of work life and career life. Which one do you tend to gravitate to more, just naturally? There was no right or wrong answer, but they had the whole room get up and move to the side of the room that they were under. And so that's a way that you can do it, but you can do that internal to your own meetings. You can have, okay, if you don't agree with it, you somewhat agree with it, or you strongly agree with it, I want you to go here, here, or here, move to that spot, right? And let's see where we're at. If you have enough people to do that, it's really cool. Or if you're in a training or something like that, or you're putting on a training. Having others show the technique or process you're talking about, and others walk around and shadow and observe. That's a really, really helpful thing for a kinesthetic learner. Anything where there is motion incorporated, actually have them do the activity themselves and simulate the real deal. That will help them to really hone in on it and memorize it. Communication lines, take a piece of paper and actually hand the paper to those involved in the meeting, during the meeting. Okay, when we're doing this, and this particular thing happens on the floor, and this is our flag that says, hey, we need to start the communication line. It's first going to come from me, then it's going to, you literally pass it to them so that they can feel the baton pass and memorize it in that way. And not only that, it's also good for the visuals, because the visual people can literally take a picture in their mind and they can remember things by seeing things. So they're observing too. So it actually works for so many different representational system preferences that as you go throughout this thing, you'll see that they all kind of jive. But just the fact that you're conscious and intentional about going into meetings like this is going to help everybody start to have different ways of learning and receiving information that you're doing on purpose. You don't even need to tell them, but it's giving opportunity to enhance the way that they're learning something. Does that make sense? Beautiful. Now, let's see. Next, auditory learners. They learn best when they hear information. They tend to be really good listeners. And they tend to be really good teachers because they can regurgitate remembered information to others really well. So this also enhances their knowledge of it. So it's kind of good for them and good for others, because when you teach things, you tend to learn them better and you know them better, right? Unconsciously, you're developing that knowing over and over and over, and then it becomes an unconscious pattern. They can just do it. Lectures, podcasts, audiobooks, class discussions are really enjoyed by this learning style, the auditory learning style. Sometimes reading out loud, right? They make up about 30% of the population, I'd say. They tend to do really well in school because it requires listening. Like I may have mentioned, I myself can ID birds better when I hear their songs or their calls much quicker than by sight or seeing them. Like it's almost instantaneous. Like when I hear it, I know what it is, versus when I look at it, I'm like, I don't really know. It could be this, could be this. So people have a really good memory when it comes to hearing phone numbers, random facts, names. Like when people hear it and you're in a conversation, they hear it, they can typically remember it pretty well. So I remember being younger, and I can still call the majority of my 7 girlfriends from home by just dialing their phone number without having to look them up. Like I have their numbers memorized because I memorize in chunks. And when I see the chunks and I hear the chunks, I can actually remember it faster, right? You tell me something, it will come in and I can literally memorize it in the moment. It's really good. It's a superpower ultimately. So for some people that's not true, but just think about what's true for you in this instance. That might not be true for you. You might not be able to remember names very well, but a lot of visual people can remember names really well, especially when you use name tags, because they can remember the vision of it. They can see the name tag in their mind, and that recalls the memory for them. We'll go back to auditory here though for now. Wording of the person who delivered the instruction, the wording that you use is important. If they ever have the choice over verbal explanation, they're going to choose that over reading it. They'll always choose verbal. So just know that. And then they're really attuned to people's tones of voice. And we talk about persuasion, the art of persuasion and leadership. We're going to talk about that in future sessions as well. But your tonality of voice goes a long way, especially for auditory people. They pick up on subtle hints. Also good to know to pay attention to how articulate you're being. Because if you're kind of losing yourself in the moment and going off the cuff and you forgot where you were talking about and you're trying to explain something and you just kind of, you become unpresent and you lose presence in the moment because maybe you're a little bit nervous to be in front of people or whatever, those subtle hints will, those subtle changes will actually change your tonality without you even knowing it. And those auditory people are tuning into that. And if you are not consistent, you will break trust with them. Right? So being consistent and showing up consistency in your tonality in specific situations will help you to build rapport with people over time. What else? Auditory learners typically are those people too that can also remember lyrics really well. So it's kind of a fun thing. Music tends to be a huge part of auditory people's lives. Many auditory and kinesthetic learners are musicians, right? Because they learn through doing the music and hearing the music. Tips for auditory learners: record everything. Send out Zoom recordings for specific things you want others to be able to review. Podcasts, YouTube videos, Looms. If you've ever used Loom, it's such a huge, amazing tool for leaders to help their people to learn, right? And especially auditory learners, not articles, not sending them articles, sending them an actual Loom of you walking through the article yourself. Repeat facts or things you're trying to remember out loud with your eyes closed and repeat it. So if you are an auditory learner and you hear this today, if you close your eyes and you speak out loud and you hear it and you don't have your eyes open where there's too much stimulus coming in, and you close down the eyes so that you don't have all that visual stimulus and you just talk it through, you're going to be able to memorize it better. Okay, repeat it, close your eyes. It's going to come up for you quicker when you do it that way. What else here? Okay. Oh, talking things out. So when you're talking things out with people, this helps an auditory learner greatly because the conversation is going and the conversation is important for auditory learners to learn, right? That's why classrooms are so successful for auditory learners, is because they have to listen. They have to hear in order to do the work, in order to learn. And so accountability groups and accountability partners, just like we have here a lot of times, help people to process better. They just do. Experiment with background music. Auditory learners don't like to study in complete silence typically, or do work in complete silence many times, yet noises also distract them easily. So there's a fine line there. You have to find something that works for study versus, or works for doing work or doing specific tasks, right? So for me, I use Tibetan sound bowls when I'm doing any administrative work on my computer. I turn on my headphones. I can't have lyrics going on in my head while I'm trying to do administrative work. It feels like this. But when I have something that's really soothing on and it's not silence, I work better. I get into a flow better. I'm able to just move through the administrative work with greater ease than it being completely silent. Okay. What else? If you're by yourself, read out loud, right? Read out loud to yourself, read out loud to others, or simply mouthing the words can also be really good for auditory learners. Ask for verbal directions, right? Ask more questions, get clarification verbally from your people, from your higher ups, from whoever, so that you can understand things better and you can pick up on things quicker. Put things you need to memorize into a rap or a rhyme and to remember them. Like, how many times do you remember? If you're an auditory person, you probably remember those alphabet type things to remember certain things in the past, or simply associate it with a song to remember it in the future. When you associate something with music and with lyrics or with a rhyme or something, you're going to hear it differently the next time you go to memorize it, right? Okay. Now the next one, let's see here. Auditory digital, right? We talked about this one, and this one tends to be a little bit different for people to understand. It's like a sixth sense, right? The other representational system preferences are using, and I haven't gotten to visual yet, we'll do that one next, but the other representational system preferences are based on specific sensory acuity. Feeling, touching, kinesthetic. Visual, seeing with your eyes, seeing. Auditory is hearing. Now we have olfactory, which is your smell, and we have gustatory, which is your taste. But typically those two, the three that we've already talked to, are the highest form of representational system preferences. The taste and the smell, they come up, but they're not as prevalent. So I leave those out. They still exist. Now, the auditory digital is like a sixth sense. It's you sensing, it's you understanding, it's the logic behind it. It's not that you have a sensory organ on your body that's equating to this thing, but if it doesn't make logical sense to you, that's almost a sensory piece in itself, but it's a sixth sense. It's more sensing. So people with extensive vocabularies, this is an example. People that enjoy language, that like learning new language, they tend to have extensive vocabularies. They like Scrabble, they like crossword puzzles, they enjoy learning new languages. These we also like to call auditory digital verbal people, because a lot of times in auditory digital land, and my mom is one of these people, they talk to themselves out loud. Most auditory digital people that are very sensing and logic driven, they very much talk to themselves out loud to talk themselves through things, because they are verbal learners, also known as linguistic learners. So they like wordplay, they like rhymes, they like puns, they like participating in discussions. Now, a lot of these are going with other representational systems, I get that, but understand that this is a sensing thing. They just sense it, they have an energetic sense of it, and that in itself is one of the sensory acuity pieces that's not necessarily always represented in the kinesthetic, auditory, or visual pieces. Many times you will hear people talk to fill the space. They hate dead silence. And they'll hum to themselves or tap their pen or pop their gum so that there's some type of thing to listen to. The weaknesses tend to be visual, like maps, graphs, charts, how to interpret any sort of visual data. These types of preferences, these types of learners don't do well with that stuff. They use their voice typing more often. Like I do this as well, because I have a higher AD and auditory digital sense. And so I talk to my phone a lot and have it just type for me, because to be in it it's overwhelming. What else? Yeah, let Google Docs type it out for you if you're one of these people, and you get to talk through it. That way you verbally are learning because you're talking to yourself, right? The auditory digital people tend to be left brainers. They're about logic, precision, making sense of something. They'll be more in their head. They do a lot of talking to themselves internally as well as externally. You might hear them talking to themselves out loud, sorting through information that maybe they just picked up on, right? So that's their ability to sort out information in their heads, but they're doing it verbally. So the verbal piece is so important to the auditory digital piece. I hope that makes sense. Now, visual. Visual, very good at visualizing. They can see images in their brain really well. My boyfriend is just like this. He can see things and have a picture in his mind, and he will talk about the pictures in his mind. Literally, he'll say, well, I had this picture in my mind, right? And that to me cues that he is a visual learner. They have great imaginations. They can see vivid details, colors. They can interpret visual information and prefer taking information through visual data. So they're really good at spelling because they can see the words spelled out in their heads. They enjoy reading information. They enjoy those articles that you give them. They enjoy the data and the graphs and the charts. They like name tags. These are the people that you see that are doodling on the side during meetings, right? They're daydreaming of pictures. They tend to like drawing and painting, especially the visual arts, movies, etc. With visual learners, calm and quiet background is most important. So for them, the less stimulation, the better for them to be able to sit down and study or do a specific task or work on a specific project and stay present. So if there's visual stuff going on around them, they're going to have a hard time. There's moving pieces. They're going to have a harder time focusing. So a busy coffee shop with a lot of busyness, probably not a great place to host a meeting for someone like this, right? Make things colorful for these people. Or if you are a visual person, you probably already have 10 different color markers at your desk and you use them all quite often in your notes and on your calendar, right? You see that it's a visual thing for them to see the colors and the things. They are able to focus even better. They tend to do best with outlines, and this is really important for you in your career and professionally working with other people, is they can visualize the organization of how that meeting is going to go in their mind. So you're actually giving them a picture of the meeting before they get into it, which helps them to organize the meeting and think about the things that they need to present and deliver at the meeting before they get there. Okay. What else do I want to mention here? For visual people, I would suggest sitting in the front of the room of any conference that you go to, sitting in the front. If you have a larger meeting, sitting in the front, making sure that if you're a visual learner, you want to see. And in the back, there's just more vision in your visual field. So taking that in can be distracting. So when you're right up front, you're close and center, your visual field is less. You don't have so much stimulus coming in to bombard that, right? Does that make sense? Cool. Now take some notes, use this next minute. You can pause me here if you want to write down a few things that came to you for what you could immediately change or things that you noticed, just your takeaway right now. All right, welcome back. So the next part is just, I want to take you through what I want you to take away from all of this. So yes, the detail is important, but at the end of the day, why does this all matter for you and your roles? Well, a lot of these preferences both blend together and they don't they? And because most of you have a little bit of each in you, it's important to know that everyone else does too. Yet we know that there is usually one that stands out. So knowing this, we can cater to others in terms of how we deliver information at work. It's awareness of self and your team as it pertains to your environment. And this is the word that I want you to write out in bold letters: environment. Highlight it, get a color, whatever you need to do to maybe say it out loud for you auditory people. Say out loud, what do I need to change in my environment that's actually going to drive greater focus, right? This comes down to productivity, your ability to be effective, to focus, to stay present. We all need different things and we need the environment to reflect where we want to go. So if we want to be more productive, if we want to be more influential, if we want to be more bold and courageous, if we want to be a better communicator, what needs to change in the environment for us to be successful? Change the environment to where you want to go. Don't leave the environment to be the same and try to change your behavior. If you have them coexisting, you will see transformation much quicker. So start thinking about what variety you could incorporate into this week to create a more successful meeting you're hosting or mentoring that you're doing. What kind of mentoring environment do you want to create that uses all four preferences? How would you rearrange the way you deliver the material to cater to all the preferences that might be in that room? This is a different level of leadership because you're thinking about what's best for all of us and what's best for our team. Now, some of my clients with meetings daily will trade off days. So for example, Mondays are moving meetings. So they'll do like a walking meeting. Tuesdays are over Zoom. And certainly days they'll pull the meeting all together and instead send out an audio message to listen to and require their people to chime in once they've listened to it and send a quick email that says, hey, I got that. Any questions or concerns, send me an email. So there's different ways to do things. And I want to open up your mind to what that might look like. So having done this exercise, kind of knowing where you stand and being aware of this now, it also will help you build rapport with others. And that's a huge takeaway because as you start asking questions, getting more curious, maybe it's asking, hey, would you prefer this information in an email or do you want to talk it through? Your staff and your people that you are mentoring will be grateful to know that you're interested in them at this level. And you don't even have to tell them where this is coming from, but just by the way that you word your questions and the interest that you show in them and giving them options of ways to do things, it's going to build rapport with them very quickly. People want options and they will typically choose what they prefer. So when you color code certain things or offer a walking meeting over the phone instead of a seated Zoom, people appreciate this. It's variety. The brain also loves novelty. It loves newness. So take a break from the seated Zoom meetings and go to a coffee shop if that's a better place, right? I remember at the gyms, because my coaches were fitness people, they like to move, go figure. So they are all pretty kinesthetic feelers individuals, right? So we did a lot of walking meetings and a lot of standing meetings. They weren't allowed to sit. We would go get the boxes that we jump on and we would flip them over into the 30-inch mark and we'd use those as desks and everybody would be standing. So knowing this allows you to play to your own strengths too, and your team's strengths. So for you, ask for what you prefer. Hey, I'd really love to see an outline or agenda before a meeting today. Do you have a brief outline you can shoot over beforehand? And encouraging your team to play to their strengths as well. It's less about the details of each one and more about the big picture. How are we addressing people and interactions? And are we catering to groups of people where all learning styles are present? Usually for you, it's during meetings and trainings, right? So for example, do you have at least one visual slide up during a meeting for those who may be visually driven, along with a recording of the presentation you can send to everyone after that highlights a specific time in there where you want them to listen again? Did you encourage dialogue so people could talk things out during the meeting, right? Just some things to think about there. So I hope this helps. Stay connected to this info in the coming weeks internally. Pay attention to it. Start utilizing your native preferences and use it as a superpower and asking for what you need. Start getting curious about your own team and pay attention to your and others' methods of delivery. How are they delivering the thing? Because they typically will deliver what they prefer, right? They just aren't aware of it. But in order to build rapport, you'll need to stop that and cater to your people, because this will help elevate your rapport. You might already be really great at rapport, and I'm assuming that you are. This is the next level. Paying attention to this will open up different things. It will open up different conversations. It will open up more curiosity. Bring examples to our next session and let's have a good time with this, right? Like, remember, not forcing this on anyone and never assuming you know something about someone. Have a short convo and put your investigator hat on. People love to be acknowledged and really for you to show interest in them is going to light them up. So start utilizing these things, put some things into play in your environment, whether it's utilizing headphones. If you have a couple of people that are in a shared office, how can you make that space more productive for everyone? How do those people focus? How do they learn? If you know that, do you just need a soft, quiet noise in the background, some ocean sound, something like that? Do you have some boundaries that you need to put into place so that we know when this is working time and we know when it's talking time? Like, what could you do in the environment to shift it to an auditory preference or a visual preference and make sure everybody in the room has a spot that where they can really be in tune, really be in flow? All right, I hope you have an awesome day. Ciao.